Coming up on Mountain News this morning, Governor Andy Beshear signs a pair of executive orders involving medical marijuana, and Senator Mitch McConnell welcomes newly elected senators to our nation's capital.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News This Morning.
Good morning to you. It's Wednesday. I'm Dakota Makris. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. It's almost 5 o'clock. Let's take it over to Brandon for a look at our forecast. And Brandon, I'd like to introduce myself as someone who gets into the studio 2 minutes before the newscast.
Well, you told on yourself. I wasn't going
Hey,
to.
at least I was doing things
Exactly.
productive.
You were working on some new news this morning.
Yeah.
We're about to tell you about. And yeah, forecast though, not a whole lot's changed, including the cold. We do see the rain trying to move out here, but I want to point out a couple of spots here for you on the satellite radar loop. Watch right here when that rain comes through there. Did you see that? Try to transition over to a little bit of snow there for a second. So a few flakes could have been flying there in parts of Breathitt, maybe back over into McGoffin counties this morning. So again, just kind of keep an eye out. Not looking for a whole lot of action today, but the possibility is there that some colder pockets of air could bring in a few snowflakes this morning and a little bit later on. Temperatures still trying to drop. Clouds are still in place though. 37 in Prestonsburg, 37 in Pikeville, Logan. It's 38 in Prestonsburg, 37 also in Clintwood, Hazard, and Jackson, Harlan, out towards Somerset as well. Irvin is at 37, and then we got several 36s as well. Looks like the cool spot in the region is 36. So there's Moorhead, London, and Monticello along with Williamsburg there. And it looks like Ashland at 39, and along with Manchester, the warm spot. So a little extra coffee this morning, maybe a little bit more if you're colder natured there. As we head out the door, though, we're going to see a cold day ahead, a dreary day ahead, and then maybe a few flakes from time to time as we only get into the upper 30s. We'll drop off a little bit more, and we'll get into the upper 30s for daytime highs this afternoon. Dakota?
Well, new this morning, we have details involving a deadly plane crash here in our region. Federal investigators are sharing early findings on the crash, which happened in Harlan County. The crash happened on November 3rd near the Tucker Guthrie Memorial Airport. The pilot, 55-year-old Dr. David Sanford, died. No one else was on board. NTSB reports the plane crashed on Dr. David's third attempt to land on a runway. Well, there was fog and the airport's lights were out of service. The NTSB says these findings are preliminary and the investigation is continuing. Well, supporters of medical marijuana say Tuesday was a win after Governor Andy Beshear signed an executive order allowing patients who meet certain requirements to have the drug. Well, the action comes after months of debate and failed legislation from the General Assembly earlier this year. But as Chad Hedrick reports, supporters say there is still work that needs to be done.
It is clear that Kentuckians want medical cannabis.
Signing an executive order Tuesday that loosens restrictions on medical cannabis in Kentucky, Governor Andy Beshear says it is past time lawmakers make it a law.
Today's action means that Kentuckians suffering from these chronic and terminal conditions will soon be able to get the help they need without living in fear of being charged with a misdemeanor.
The order permits Kentuckians with certain severe medical conditions such as cancer, MS, PTSD, or terminal illnesses to possess up to 8 ounces of medical cannabis legally bought in another state.
These are actions that I can take as governor to provide access to medical cannabis and relief to those who need it to better enjoy their life without pain.
Beshear says current treatments often include highly addictive opioids, an epidemic that has plagued Kentucky, where more than 2,100 Kentuckians died from overdoses last year.
A recent study showed a 64% reduction in opioid use among chronic pain patients who used medical cannabis. Yet for years, including this last legislative session, medical cannabis has failed to pass, even as nearly 90% of Kentuckians now favor it.
The order goes into effect January 1st, 2 days before lawmakers return to Frankfort.
That was Chad Hedrick reporting. Yesterday's order does not legalize medical marijuana in Kentucky. It just gives options for patients who have to travel out of state for the treatment. It comes after an advisory panel toured the state, talking to Kentuckians, and an online portal garnered more than 3,500 comments with 98% in support of the measure. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell welcomed newly elected Republican senators to Washington, D.C. The group is in the nation's capital for the congressional member orientation. The group gathered in his office for a photo op, and the senator encouraged the new senators to accomplish something during their time.
Okay, we're happy to welcome our new senators this morning. Our former colleague Lamar Alexander used to say it's hard to get here, hard to stay here. So while you're here, why don't you try to accomplish something? And so we're thrilled to have these new senators orientation this week, and look forward to making significant progress for the country.
When a shadowed question asked if the new members would support Senator McConnell as leader, they were encouraged not to answer, and the Senate Minority Leader declined to answer as well. Well, the senator spoke openly about his position as Senate Minority Leader being threatened by at least one other Republican. Florida Senator Rick Scott said he will challenge Senator McConnell for the job, tweeting, quote, "The status quo is broken and a big change is needed. That's why I'm running to be the Senate Republican leader," end quote. During a news conference, Senator McConnell said he has no intention of backing down, even though others are allowed to challenge him.
I think the outcome is pretty clear. I want to repeat again. I have the votes. I will be elected.
While speaking on the midterm elections, the senator said it is obvious Republicans underperformed with independent voters and attributed that to the impression that candidates were engulfed in chaos, negativity, and excessive attacks, and said it frightened independents and moderate Republican voters. Well, Kentucky Power announced plans to update 9 miles of outdated power lines near Prestonsburg. The new lines will be stronger and are more resistant to outages. Officials also hope to form a more accessible route for the new lines, but this may affect landowners. Kentucky Power held a town hall in Prestonsburg to inform the public and to get their feedback.
It's a 3-year project start to finish, so we have a lot of time in this. We're in the very first phase and working on establishing the route that we will be building new transmission structures and lines.
Kentucky Power says it will work with homeowners in the area to decide the best route. The project is expected to be completed in late 2025. Well, thank you so much for getting your Wednesday morning started with the Sierra Mountain News this morning. When we come back, we have liftoff after NASA finally sends its Artemis 1 rocket on a historic journey, making a big step in getting humans back on the moon.
Every second of that this morning is fantastic. The rain chances are on the way out, but the cold isn't going anywhere. I'll have more on the winter preview in about 3 minutes.